Senior, I am begging you to stop eating these 5 vegetables that are ruining your legs. Have your legs been feeling a little heavier lately? Not the kind of tired that goes away after a nap. I'm talking about that slow, dragging feeling, like you're walking through wet sand. Maybe it sneaks up on you when you're getting out of bed in the morning. Or maybe you pause before climbing the stairs, just for a second, hoping today won't be the day your knees betray you. Now imagine this. You're sitting at your kitchen table reaching for your morning pills. The sun is shining through the curtains. There's coffee in your cup and a piece of whole wheat toast on your plate, and you're doing everything right, or at least trying. But despite all your best efforts, your legs still ache, they still wobble, they still feel like they've lost a bit of their spark. And here's the part no one tells you. Some of the very vegetables we've been told are healthy. Those colorful, crunchy, innocent-looking staples in our fridge may quietly be making things worse. Not for everyone, but for some seniors, especially those dealing with joint stiffness, inflammation, or nerve sensitivity. The foods we thought were helping might actually be quietly undermining our strength. I know, that's a hard pill to swallow. But don't worry, we're going to walk through this together, one small step at a time. You're not alone in this, so take a breath. Maybe grab a warm drink. Let's uncover the hidden truths behind 5 everyday vegetables, and more importantly, discover what you can do today to take back control of your leg strength. One bite at a time. And hey, if this sounds like something your sister, neighbor, or walking buddy should hear too, hit that, tap subscribe, and ring that little bell so you'll never miss a story that matters. 1. The comfort food that might be dragging you down: potatoes. Let me tell you about Earl. He's 74, lives in Indiana, and has the warmest laugh you've ever heard. For most of his life, Earl started dinner the same way, with a big helping of mashed potatoes, creamy, buttery, smooth. It was comfort food from his childhood, the kind of dish that reminded him of Sunday dinners with his mother and snowy football games on TV. But over the past few years, something changed. Earl noticed his knees ached more than they used to. Getting up from his favorite recliner took longer, and those evening walks with his wife, they became shorter and then stopped altogether. Earl chalked it up to aging, like most folks do. But during a checkup, we had a heart-to-heart, and when we talked about his diet, one thing stood out: his potatoes, every single day, in some form, mashed, fried, roasted, or baked. Now here's the thing about white potatoes: they aren't bad, but they can be tricky. They have a high glycemic index, which means they spike your blood sugar quickly, kind of like a roller coaster that climbs too fast and crashes hard. And every time that happens, your body releases insulin, and a silent process called inflammation sneaks in. Why does that matter? Because chronic, low-grade inflammation is like a slow fire burning inside your joints and muscles. It doesn't scream. It whispers day after day, making your knees stiff, your ankles ache, and your energy fizzle out before the afternoon hits. And if Earl's potatoes were fried, think French fries, chips, or hash browns, it gets worse. Frying creates compounds like acrylamide, which has been linked to nerve damage and inflammation. That's not the kind of crunch your legs need. There's also something called solanine, a natural chemical in potatoes, especially if the skin turns green or starts sprouting. In sensitive people, solanine may irritate joints, cause stiffness, and in some cases, make old injuries flare up. In my own practice, I've seen patients like Earl, otherwise doing great, slowly lose their pep just because of this daily habit. It's not about one meal. It's about the slow drip, the everyday choices that wear down our joints like water on stone. But there's good news. You don't have to swear off spuds forever. We made one small swap for Earl, switching his daily white potatoes to sweet potatoes a few times a week. Sweet potatoes have a gentler impact on blood sugar and come packed with antioxidants like beta-carotene. He also started adding carrots and roasted squash for variety. A few months later, Earl was back to walking his 2 blocks. Still slow, still careful, but with far less pain and a smile that made me smile, too. So, if your legs feel heavy or stiff, and white potatoes are a regular visitor to your plate, it might be worth pausing. Ask yourself, is this comfort or a quiet contributor? Let's take a look at the next surprising culprit, one that hides in bright colors and crunchy textures. And chances are, it's in your salad bowl right now. 2. When colorful isn't always comforting. Bell peppers. You'd never guess it from looking at her. But Margaret from Arizona is a retired firefighter. Tough as nails in her younger days. But when she turned 70, she started experiencing something. She couldn't fight her way through a strange, nagging ache in her knees and ankles. Not sharp, just persistent. Like a pebble in her shoe that she couldn't shake. She tried yoga, switched her shoes, bought one of those fancy copper knee sleeves from late-night TV, but nothing made a real difference. Until, by pure accident, she forgot to buy her favorite ingredient, bell peppers. You see, Margaret loved making fajitas and salads packed with raw, crisp peppers, red, green, yellow, orange. She thought of them as health heroes. Vitamin C, hydration, crunch what's not to love. But here's where the science gently taps you on the shoulder. Bell peppers are part of the nightshade family, a group of plants that includes tomatoes, eggplant, and potatoes. And in some people, nightshades can stir up inflammation, especially around the joints. It's not an allergy. In the traditional sense, it's more like an overreaction by a sensitive immune system. Green bell peppers in particular, which are really just unripe versions of the red ones, contain higher levels of certain compounds called alkaloids. One of them, solanine, acts a bit like a slow irritant in some older adults, especially if they already have arthritis or chronic joint discomfort. Now, not everyone reacts to these vegetables the same way. Some people eat peppers every day and feel amazing. But if you're like Margaret and your joints feel stiff without a clear reason, it might be worth a second look. When Margaret went a few weeks without her daily peppers, something curious happened. The ache that had been her new normal started to lift. Just a little at first, but enough to notice. From my years working with seniors, I've learned this. Sometimes, it's not about removing every so-called trigger. It's about paying attention to how food makes you feel, not just in your stomach, but in your knees, your hips, your morning walk. So what can you do if you love that sweet crunch? Try swapping green bell peppers for the riper red or yellow ones. They're often easier on the body. Better yet, roast them gently. Cooking can reduce some of the more irritating compounds, or go a different route entirely. Sliced zucchini, fresh cucumbers, or even celery sticks can give you that same satisfying crunch without the inflammation baggage. Margaret still enjoys her fajitas, but now she builds them with grilled zucchini and roasted red peppers. She swears they taste better. And more importantly, she walks a little taller without that ghost of a pain following her around. But bell peppers aren't the only healthy vegetable that can secretly stir up trouble. Next, let's visit a vegetable with a royal purple robe, and a sneaky side effect for your legs. 3. The royal-looking veggie with a not-so-regal side eggplant. When Dennis from New Jersey retired from his job at the post office, he finally had time to do what he loved most, cooking. He dove headfirst into Mediterranean recipes. Eggplant parmesan, baba ganoush, ratatouille, the works. He even bought a tiny indoor grill so he could get those perfect char marks on thick eggplant slices. It made him feel alive again. But what didn't feel alive? His legs. Or at least, not in a good way. After just a few months of his eggplant spree, Dennis noticed something unsettling. His knees felt stiffer. His ankles creaked more, and getting up from the floor after playing with his grandkids became a slow, awkward process. Now here's the surprising twist. Eggplant beautiful. Bold. Full of fiber is also a member of that same tricky group we mentioned earlier, the nightshade family, like bell peppers and white potatoes. It contains alkaloids. And for some people, those alkaloids can fan the flames of inflammation in joints that are already sensitive, but eggplant brings an extra twist. It's also high in something called oxalates, natural compounds that, in high amounts, or in people who don't process them well, can mess with how our bodies absorb important minerals like calcium. And calcium, as you know, is crucial not just for bones, but for muscle contraction, balance, and coordination. When calcium gets blocked or leached away slowly, our legs can start to feel unreliable, not suddenly, but gradually, like sand slipping out of a bag. Dennis didn't make the connection at first, but after we sat down and reviewed his food journal, something I always recommend when mystery pains pop up, eggplant showed up like a headline every other day, sometimes twice a day. So we ran a little test. No eggplant for 6 weeks, plenty of water, calcium from leafy greens and sardines, magnesium for good measure. And guess what? Dennis didn't just feel better. He got back on the floor with his grandkids and up again without the usual grunt and groan. The lesson here isn't that eggplant is evil, it's that your body might be more intuitive than you think. And sometimes, a food that seems like a hero might just be a little too much for your story right now. So if you adore that soft, meaty texture in your recipes, don't worry. You've got options. Try portobello mushrooms, roasted, grilled, marinated, they're savory, satisfying, and free of nightshades. Zucchini also does a lovely job standing in for eggplant in many dishes, especially when layered or grilled. Dennis still cooks up a storm. He just listens more closely now, not just to recipes, but to his own body. And that brings us to another food, one that's even more beloved, even more common, and hiding in nearly every kitchen in America. Let's talk about the vegetable that everyone thinks is a fruit and the truth behind its slippery side effects. 4. The beloved red staple that may be fueling the fire, tomatoes. Let me introduce you to Judith. She's 76, a retired librarian from Pennsylvania with an eye for crossword puzzles and an impressive tomato garden out back. Every summer, she proudly canned her own tomato sauce, made fresh bruschetta, and sipped homemade tomato juice on her porch like it was sacred. But over the last few years, something changed. Her toes started to swell, her ankles ached even on days she wasn't on her feet. She described it like a tightness, as if her joints were wearing boots one size too small. When I asked about her diet, Judith smiled and said, "Oh, I eat clean. Doc, lots of vegetables, especially tomatoes. They're my favorite." That's when my gut said, let's take a closer look. Here's the gentle science. Tomatoes, though technically a fruit, are another member of that infamous nightshade family. Yes, the same family as eggplant, bell peppers, and white potatoes. They contain alkaloids like solanine, which can irritate sensitive joints in some seniors, especially when the tomatoes are unripe or heavily processed. But that's not the whole story. Tomatoes are also acidic, and that can be a problem for folks like Judith who deal with gout or inflammatory arthritis. High acid foods may trigger flare-ups by shifting your body's pH balance in a way that stirs up uric acid, the villain behind gouty toe attacks. And then there's lectins, a type of protein found in tomatoes and some other plants. For people with autoimmune issues or digestive sensitivity, lectins can irritate the gut lining, increase inflammation throughout the body, and lead to that vague, achy fatigue that just won't quit. The kind where you don't feel sick, but you definitely don't feel strong either. Judith had no idea that her cherished tomatoes could be playing a role. But just like Dennis and Margaret, she gave the experiment a try. She swapped out her tomato sauce for a homemade tomato blend made from carrots, beets, and pumpkin. She took a break from fresh tomatoes for a month, and sure enough, the swelling in her feet went down. She felt lighter. Her morning stiffness eased, and for the first time in years, she was able to walk her little terrier past the second mailbox down the street. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying everyone needs to quit tomatoes. They're full of lycopene, a powerful antioxidant, and for many people, they're perfectly fine. But if you've got achy joints, slow recovery, after walks, or swelling in your lower legs, it might be worth running your own gentle experiment. Try cutting back for a few weeks. Cook your tomatoes thoroughly when you do eat them. Ripe red ones are better than green. And consider alkalizing foods to balance your plate. Think leafy greens, cucumbers, or avocados. Judith still tends her tomato garden, but now she gives most of the harvest away. And she tells me, with a wink, turns out my tomatoes were better for my neighbors than they were for me. So if you're feeling that mysterious ache in your legs, don't dismiss your diet. Because next up, we're looking at a vegetable that shows up in casseroles, side dishes, and summer BBQs and might just be the most deceptively comforting of them all. 5. The sweet summertime favorite that might be slowing you down. Corn. Now let's talk about Charles. He's 81, a retired school principal from Georgia, with a voice like Morgan Freeman and a love for grilling that borders on spiritual. Every Sunday, like clockwork, he'd fire up the grill, toss on some chicken, and wrap a few ears of corn in foil, a family tradition as golden as the corn itself. But last summer, Charles called me after a fall. Nothing broken, thank heavens, but he'd tripped walking down the back steps. He said his legs just didn't catch him like they used to. They felt heavy, slow, off balance. His energy wasn't the same, and even his usual evening stroll felt like pushing a shopping cart with the brakes on. We talked through everything: medication, shoes, hydration, and then we got to food. "Doc," he said, "I don't eat junk, just good, hearty stuff. Corn, cornbread, little bit of creamed corn. Can't be the problem." Right. Well, let's unpack that. Here's the deal. Corn isn't evil. Let's not demonize grandma's chowder. But corn, especially in the way it's processed and consumed today, can present a real challenge for older bodies trying to stay strong and stable. First, corn is very starchy. It's technically a grain, not a vegetable, and it has a high glycemic index, meaning it can cause a fast spike in blood sugar, followed by a sharp crash, and those constant sugar swings, especially in seniors, don't just mess with energy, they quietly stoke inflammation, leading to joint pain, stiffness, and a sense that your legs just won't wake up. But it goes deeper. Corn contains phytic acid, a natural compound that can block the absorption of key minerals like calcium, zinc, and magnesium. And guess what those minerals support? You got it: strong bones, muscle coordination, nerve function, and balance. Without enough of them over time, your legs can lose their power, your reflexes dull, and that simple act of standing up becomes a struggle. And then there's the lectin factor, similar to tomatoes. Some seniors have a tough time processing lectins, and it can lead to gut irritation and systemic inflammation. That inflammation might not scream in your belly. It might show up in your knees, your hips, your ankles. Now, if you throw genetically modified GMO corn or high fructose corn syrup into the mix, which hides in everything from crackers to ketchup, the situation worsens. Some people report sensitivities to GMO proteins. Others just feel bloated, sluggish, or inexplicably achy after meals heavy in processed corn. So what happened with Charles? We made some small but mighty tweaks. He swapped his Sunday corn for green beans tossed in olive oil and garlic. He replaced his cornbread with a slice of whole grain sourdough. And he got adventurous, adding lentils and peas to soups and stews for fiber and comfort without the starch overload. 6 weeks in, Charles called me again. "Doc," he said, "I didn't fall this week. I danced." Okay, danced might be generous. It was 2 steps in his kitchen to an old Motown song, but to him, it was movement with confidence. And that's everything. Corn isn't the villain in every story, but in large amounts, or if you rely on processed forms of it, it can quietly chip away at your strength, especially in your legs. So take a moment to check your pantry, look at your plate, and ask yourself, is this helping me walk taller or making my steps a little shakier? Because now we've covered 5 surprising foods, and maybe, just maybe, one of them has been holding your legs back without you knowing it. Let's bring it all home together. If you've made it this far, I want to take a moment to thank you not just for listening, but for caring. Because I know this wasn't an easy conversation. We just walked through 5 vegetables most people would never suspect: white potatoes, bell peppers, eggplant, tomatoes, and corn. Each one loved and familiar. Each one with the potential to quietly chip away at your leg strength, your balance, your confidence. But here's the truth I hope you carry with you. Eating well in your 70s, 80s, or even 90s isn't about fear. It's not about swearing off everything delicious or natural. It's about remembering that your legs still matter. Your independence still matters. You still deserve energy, dignity, and peace. In my years working with seniors, I've learned that small, thoughtful changes often matter more than big, dramatic ones. Swapping white potatoes for roasted sweet potatoes. Trying portobello mushrooms instead of eggplant. Going easy on green bell peppers and experimenting with cooked zucchini or carrots. These aren't punishments, they're acts of self-kindness. They're your way of saying, "Hey body, I'm still here with you. I still care. Maybe one of these vegetables is fine for you. Maybe 2. Maybe none. Or maybe, just maybe, that one simple change unlocks the strength in your legs that you forgot you still had." So if something I said today reminded you of your own story or someone you love, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with them. Tell them what surprised you. Let's start more of these honest conversations, the kind that help us walk stronger, live longer, and laugh without wincing. And before you go, do me one last favor. Click that like button, hit subscribe, and tap the little bell, not just for me, but for you. Because every week, I'll be here across this digital kitchen table bringing stories, science, and heart to help you live better. One gentle step at a time. You are not weak. You are healing. And your next walk might just be your best one yet. Thanks for being here. Stay strong. Stay curious. And take care of those beautiful legs of yours.